Hey everyone, it's Bob Pulver. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. In this episode, I sit down with Giancarlo Erra, creative tech entrepreneur with a wealth of experience in AI. Giancarlo is constantly building novel AI solutions or teaching others how to do so. You can check out his website and some of his AI solutions using the links in the show notes for this episode. Giancarlo and I delve into the challenges faced by small businesses in adopting AI, exploring misconceptions about the technology, and emphasize the importance of education and critical thinking in navigating the AI landscape. Giancarlo also stresses the need for society to take responsibility for AI adoption more broadly, and for the workforce to upskill in order to adapt to the evolving job market. Let's dive into this comprehensive and informative conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I'm your host, Bob Pulver. With me today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Giancarlo Erra. How are you this morning, Giancarlo?
Everything is good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I guess it's afternoon for you, I suppose, being in the UK. But thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to get into the weeds with you because you are like an AI renaissance man, I would say. So by way of introduction, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and some of the things you're working on?
Yeah, I'm a creative tech entrepreneur. I've been doing that for now almost 25 years. And I'm a professional touring musician. So you will just split my life between those two things. Staying on the tech side of things, started as a developer and then, business tech consultant, technical director, and then obviously entrepreneur, started my own startups. And I've always been involved with mentoring and tutoring. And now I do a lot of that around obviously AI because it is what every business wants to know about. And I run the AI summits in the UK. We've done, Liverpool, Cambridge. We're going to be London. We've done Norwich, Peterborough, basically going all around the country. And I do some AI workshops for businesses, and I do some mentoring and tutoring as well. And I'm an advisor as well about all of that. And my obsession, and the reason why obviously is the AI Summit, is my obsession is the simplification. So my obsession is getting all the people that are not tech and possibly they are business owners, and then helping them and explaining to them, in particular with AI, I've always done it with everything, trying to find the simplest and more efficient solution to their problem. In particular, when we're talking about businesses not having, engineers or big resources to obviously embrace technologies.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm not sure how you juggle all of that. That's amazing. And when you said, business owners, so we're talking about small businesses, maybe medium-sized business. What's your sort of average?
Basically, I'm very much, if there are startups, even better. As a founder myself of quite a few companies, I get very excited about the early stages of creativity and madness. I've never been a big fan of the enterprise way. The bigger the companies, the least interesting it becomes for me. So, usually the small, medium businesses. Yeah.
No, I can totally appreciate that, having spent quite a bit of time at large enterprises. But the last few years, working with startups and talking regularly with entrepreneurs like yourself, as you help these businesses, I mean, what are some of the patterns that you see? I mean, are you seeing like specific things that are consistent, or maybe differences across like industries?
Understandably enough, the smaller the business, usually, obviously, the least amount of resources you have, and probably you don't have many employees. So everything is a bit all over the place in a way, and you are always struggling for time and efficiency. They are faster than the obviously enterprise and corporate, but very often they are also struggling to understand how they can implement these things without the big investments, because in particular with AI, basically everyone can use ChatGPT or whatever available tools. The second level from it is all the big galaxy of apps built on LLMs, be it ChatGPT or whatever it is. And then there is the third element, that is, your own custom, I don't know, developing your own custom model, or even using an open custom model and then, make it your own. that is what most businesses think they want. And probably I would say 50% of the time they're right, but that is pretty much out of their reach because first of all they have no idea how to do it, and once you go and you see consultants and businesses and stuff, the pricing and the complication that they have out of it is unbelievable. And as always happens, it happened with blockchain, Web3 is happening now, and lots of people, they're obviously riding this wave and they're charging incredibly stupid amounts of money, just playing on the fact that no one knows and everyone is in a hurry to just adopt AI. And so when I said that is the pattern that I see most of the times, they don't know what to do, and they are in a hurry to just do something, whatever it is. And very often it means that they just put the technology in front of the problem. That is the main thing I do every single time. They say, "Oh, we want to use AI for this, and that." And I'm always telling them, let's swap the table. Let's turn this table because you're putting it in the wrong order. What are these processes that you want? Let's talk about these internal processes. Let's see what you want to do, and then let's talk about if AI is a viable solution. Maybe it's not. Happened to me, probably the same with you, lots of the times that people think that AI is there and they can skip on, I don't know, developing, they can skip on coding stuff, they can skip on paying their developers, they can skip on paying their marketing. That is always happening. That happens all the time. So that is the main thing. And the other one, as I said before, it is helping them understanding what they need, because it is true that ChatGPT, it is something everyone can use, but in my personal opinion, in my personal case, no one is really using it as it could be used. The custom GPTs, for example, people are always surprised as I tell them, actually, if you spend some time, I can make for you a custom chat GPT that is done with your stuff. And actually, it might solve probably a good 50% of the things that you want to do. And it's perfectly fine being ChatGPT or whatever it is, because you don't need that extra layer of security. Some other times they need the personal custom solutions. So that is the main pattern I see. Putting the technology in front of the problem, and then not really understanding what they need. And yeah, and that is obviously part of the problem is the media narrative. We can see, all of us, we see that we have the tech media, if you want, for the tech people, that they're all into the details, the tech stuff that obviously normal people don't understand. And then you have the general media in the UK here, but I see the same in the US, that is basically mostly fear, is either fear mongering or trying to explain something and not being either accurate or simple enough for people to get it. So basically, there is this huge gap in the middle of people scrambling around, knowing by feeling that they need to somehow understand what this is, and not knowing what to do. That is the whole reason that I've done the AI summits, and and this is the whole reason why I usually do advise people and companies with AI, just because of all those reasons.
Folks like you and I spend so much time, trying to keep up with all of these advancements that it's going out and interacting with the people who have other things to do, right? Who are trying to run their business, who are trying to, meet, deadlines and work on projects and things like that. They don't have time for all of this, and sometimes we have to maintain that balance so that we understand how to reframe, to your point, what this all means, because a lot of it is sort of noise and a lot of it is way too much in the technical,
Yeah,
weeds about, sort of point release and every advancement in these models and some of the technical details. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm not as technical as you are, but I mean, just seeing some of this, I mean, I think if we were to fast forward to, a year or two from now, we'd look back and say, why was that even like newsworthy? But I love your perspective, and those observations make complete sense that everyone is, in the US we would say, putting the cart before the horse. They see AI as this broad, maybe set of technologies and this sort of silver bullet, however you want to think about it, and they're not focusing on where they need help with a particular business, challenge, right? And I'm wondering if you think some of this is because people didn't adopt the last sort of wave of technological, advancement,
Yeah. No, no, it is true. It is true. I think that obviously the fact that now it is so easily available, because before there was the easy chat interface of ChatGPT, all of that was quite inaccessible. That is, as usual, that's what made it very accessible. And this is also a very good point of what you said about the perception of people, because I mean, in a way, it's not a new technology. I mean, not without in a way, it is not a new technology. We're just throwing power and money at it, to be more powerful processing, obviously optimized algorithms and, more data. But we are, forcing it through it. So basically, very often it's very interesting because a question always get asked, oh, that they always tell me, oh, it's going so fast. What's going to happen in, I don't know, just in a few months or next year or whatever? And I always tell everyone, I said, actually, yeah, there was an advancement, but we're still talking about the same technology. And I always tell them, until someone comes up with either the hardware or the software next idea for generative AI, we're not going to see that, you are going to see a diminished returns. And, this is what's happening even now, before, within, between GPT-4, GPT-4o, and then there was the GPT-4 or whatever preview that in theory is reasoning, and then in practice it is not very good anyway. Basically the perception, oh, now it's reasoning. And obviously the thing is, if you don't know in a very simple way how it works, it's very well understandable that you think, oh, now I can reason, which obviously is not true. It's not it's not what's happening at all. So yeah, that perception, I think it is going fast. It is going fast, that's for sure. But it's not really going to be anything major until we will see the next shift in terms of hardware or software. So I always tell people, probably, the hype phase very steep. We are now more in a plateau, and then we will see what's going to happen, depending on, if we keep just, we can't keep throwing energy and money just the same thing. There will be GPT 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. I'm sure it will be better, but the difference between GPT 3 and 4 and then the 4 and 5, there will be always less and less. So I always try to keep people also to try to give them a bit of a perspective of a reality check, if you want, because as I said, it's everywhere and it's not always newsworthy. But that confirms the fact that even the general media, they don't know what they're talking about. That also doesn't really help a good constructive dialogue about it, because AI, like the internet, like mobile phones, is going to be a disruptive technology. It is. So it's going to be destructive with some jobs, it's going to create many other jobs. But the thing is, a responsibility is on us as a society in terms of what we do with it. And until we promote a constructive talk about it, we are not going to get out of it. We can't, my main fear is when someone tells me, oh, I'm scared of losing my job, I'm scared of fake news, whatever. I'm telling them, I'm not scared of any of that. I'm scared of us leaving the responsibility of a technology that it works fairly, leaving this responsibility either to the tech giants or to the governments. And I
Yeah.
believe that they're not going to do it because they have they're not the ones that are going to change things. I don't believe in a top down approach. I think that education and us as a society it is us who are going to drive how this is adopted and how it is going to be planned out. But that means that we need education, we need a lot of stuff. We need to solve the challenges that we have in front of us.
I definitely agree with you. I spent a lot of time in the responsible AI space, and I use that term just for the audience's sake as the sort of umbrella term over governance and ethics and fairness and transparency, explainability. And so there's a lot of facets to this. And, in some ways, a small business probably has less risk exposure, I suppose, but it doesn't mean that, something that goes awry won't have a sort of outsized, impact to the way that they, operate, right? Like if you put everything into like I don't know, some agentic AI, workflow, and all of a sudden you went from a mom and pop, old school paper pencil cash register thing, and all of a sudden now you've automated perhaps too much, and something goes wrong, and now all your orders are screwed up and all that. Maybe they all shipped to the wrong place or whatever it is. Like that's a huge problem. But I do agree with you that regulation, relying on the government is, while it's important for them to have those conversations and to push forward, they won't be able to keep up. And we've certainly in the U.S. here, we've seen that quite clearly that they can't keep up, or they have a knee-jerk reaction to certain things. I mean, even the California legislation that was vetoed by Governor Newsom was really putting too much onus on, to your point, the big technology vendors, the ones that can afford, the compute costs and the energy costs to build these models in the first place. You've got to really look at the use case. I mean, I do like what the EU did in terms of looking at sort of risk pyramid, and you really got to look at the use case and how a technology is used, right? I mean, a car is a utility. It's a lot of things, but it could also be used as a weapon, right? It's also a dangerous thing. So you've got to put regulations around how a particular technology is used.
It's very interesting you talk about the car, because during my roundtables or public speaking, the car is as an example. When I see that everyone is very concerned about safety and stuff, the car is actually an example. I always tell them. I always tell everyone. I said, look, as an example, I always tell them, when you go and buy a car, the retailer, it's not going to spend like 5 hours with you telling you, oh, be careful with the car, you can kill someone. Or even more, the car manufacturer, we don't have cars that can go only 5 miles per hour and are surrounded by airbags everywhere around it, so that we are sure they don't go anything wrong. It is us as a society that we are educated to it, and we are taking the responsibility of using a tool properly. That is the main thing. Obviously, cars have then all the security reasons and all the things that are needed to enhance that. But I was thinking, why with AI? But it's not the only AI the case, obviously. Why with AI is all about the technology and stuff, and we're not actually taking any responsibility as a society, or companies as companies, or governments as the ones who pay for education. Because as you were saying before, one of the main problems is the lack of education. It is. I mean, schools, they have absolutely no idea. They're still considering AI as cheating instead of teaching the students how to use it. Jobs, same thing. So, I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. I think, that is the main problem. And I think that as long as we think that this can be solved by someone else and not us, then I think it's not going to change.
This is why I've been pushing on organizations and individuals to really understand, just start to use it, start to see what it can do, test its limitations, see where it's hallucinating, as they say. Ask it a question that you already know the answer to and see what it says, and see if you really think it's giving you 100%.
What if I told you that your boss skydives, Tim in marketing is a magician, and Sam in accounting does sums in his head while standing on his hands? Seeing sides of the people you work with but never see, sides that inform and inspire their work and that can inspire yours, is what The Talent Show is all about. Email me, Tom Alexander, host of The Talent Show, at talentshow@backboneinc.com, and show us what you got. I look forward to seeing you on The Talent Show.
Accurate response, because it happens to me all the time. I will, just in the course of my work, with maybe I'm researching a particular company or technology. I mean, I've looked up companies that I know exactly what they do, and then I ask it, and then I have to nudge it a little bit, like, no, it's this type of company, and then it'll just completely make up a story about what this company does based on my initial and secondary prompts. I'm just trying to give you a nudge and give you a little bit of context so that you can go and find the right information. But I know that what you just returned to me is wrong, and it'll just leave it out there as if it was, fact. And then until I call it out and challenge it, it'll just leave it that way. But if I challenge it, it'll be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Da, da, da. Well, why did you say it? It's okay to not fully understand how everything works behind it. The point is to apply your own critical thinking. It's not a calculator. right? And so apply your own critical thinking and understand how you can use it as an aid to start to get you to the right place. But as the models evolve, I mean, hopefully hallucinations decrease. And if you build, to your point before about the custom models, and as you sort of train it with your proprietary data or the way that you write, if you're using it as a writing assistant and writing, Copilot or something like that, it'll start to get better and better. But you can't completely rely on it, which is where I think people get into trouble.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you use the word critical thinking. This is always something else I use a lot. When I speak to parents, or I've done some tutoring for college here, and, they're obviously concerned about, what jobs will be available for my kids. And I always tell everyone, I said, look, I mean, knowledge, it is something that AI can help with, but that means that we humans are left with what we are best and what we should be best at. That is not remembering stuff. What we are best at is critical thinking. I always say critical thinking. I mean, we raised the generation, including my one, in the last 40 years, probably more, that everyone needs to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. So we don't need any more thinkers. We don't need any more creatives. We don't need any more, I don't know, philosophers, whatever. And I'm always telling people, actually, what the AI will likely do, it is that all this, I think they're called humanistic thing, all this humanistic sides of us, they are the things that we need. We need more people able to critical think. We need more creatives. We will need a lot of the soft skills, communication between humans, empathy, all these skills, the ones that before they were considered secondary because you mean to, if you're an engineer you're better. Actually, this is finally being reverted, and we're going back into using our brain. In our brain, for me is the same when I see someone spending a whole day scanning items as a cashier in a supermarket, or I see someone spending their whole day on an Excel file doing the stuff, I'm really feeling pain because I'm really thinking, you as a human being, I wouldn't say you're being not used, or I think you are honestly wasting your time into something that you don't like. And probably you have so much better that you can give. I don't know, the cashier in the supermarket, they are excellent people. They're lovely, they talk to people. Maybe we can use them in something else. Maybe they could do, instead of scanning items on a bar with barcodes, they could just do something like customer support, or maybe not even dealing with customers. Maybe they can be therapists, whatever. But you know what I mean? I think that all of us, we have such a big potential once we start exploring it and once we have the time for it. And that is the opportunity, I think, that there is with AI. The opportunity is that it might free us from all this like repetitive and boring and, brain killing jobs, and actually, everyone else having the time for the rest. But there is a big problem in there, that it will work only if we embrace it as a society. So we protect the weaker people. We make sure that people that are in the jobs that will be replaced are upskilled. And that is a responsibility of the businesses. And then we need to be sure that governments jump on with education. That is the key factor. And they are very different. They are very difficult challenges. Asking governments to spend more on education instead of cutting, and asking businesses to spend more in upskilling instead of firing, they're very difficult things to do. But we need to face it. It's the elephant in the room that we need to face it. If we do that, then AI might literally allow most of us to do what we like in terms of jobs, and to elevate all of us. I really believe in that.
Yeah, I do too. There's so much to unpack there. I guess the first part I'll unpack is around education. I absolutely agree, but I don't understand why people don't see that starting to learn how to use AI and use AI properly is similar to, having your first computer, or, all these Gen Z, to some degree millennials, and now Gen Alpha, I think are calling it. But they were given digital devices before they could talk, right? So, I mean, they can handle this easily. They're already using it in various forms with the apps that they use on their smartphone, which is basically a computer. And so there's AI, there's all kinds of AI on those devices already. So why would you not teach them how to use it, just like they might take computer science in high school now? But I mean, you've got to understand where things are going and how you're positioning this future workforce to be successful for the jobs that may not exist right now. So the other thing I wanted to just hit on was the skills piece, which to your point, it's those human, what we used to call soft skills. Yeah, I agree with you. It's sort of switched. They're not soft at all. Those are the powerful skills. Those are the real human skills that are the hardest for AI to take on, including the reasoning that you mentioned before. But those are the durable skills. Those are the ones that are going to last, and those are the ones that are important to complement whatever AI can do today and whatever AI can do tomorrow. We will always need the critical thinking, the empathy, the creativity, and the ability to take in all this context and all this other information to make decisions. That's why, especially in the talent space, I get concerned when people are overly reliant on any the output of any AI, whether that's in text form or it's a recommendation or it's an actual, score or stack rank of a person, right? Behind that application is a person, there's a human being, and we need to treat that with the right, sort of sensitivity and in terms of fairness and, potential adverse impact and things like that. And so there's just so much that we can do to position ourselves, properly for this. And if we don't get ahead of it and push legislators to do the right things in the interest of us as human beings, this doesn't evolve in a positive direction.
No, I totally agree. As I said, it's a tricky one. It's a difficult one. Wow, but what I see is that every single time that I'm asked to speak at an event is something, usually it is always something like explaining to people how AI works in very simple terms and stuff, and then explaining them a bit of the tools and some, tips and tricks on how to use the tools that are available there. The thing is that once the end I open the room to questions, you can be sure that we always end up talking about these topics. So that is always something that actually comforts me, I think, because I can see that people, even before understanding, all right, okay, how can I use ChatGPT, whatever it is for, I don't know, automating my emails, whatever it is, a technical detail, they all want to talk first about what we're talking about it now. And that gives me hope that actually society knows, we as a society, we know that we need to go deep into that as much as we like to go deep into the technology side of things. So I'm always hoping that as more people like me, like yourself, get out there and try to help people with education, basically trying to help people thinking about things. All the summits that I do, people always tell me, oh, I arrived here with lots of questions and I got all my questions answered, but actually now I have more questions, even more, and they are more deep. And most of the times they are about all these topics we're talking about, education, how it affects us. And I think that, it's a fertile ground at the moment with society. And I think that it is the responsibility of, as I said, people like yourself, like me, like many others trying to do this, to basically try and help everyone starting this sort of constructive discussions, because I think this is what will allow us to understand, what is hallucination, what is not, how AI can actually, because it does enhance our productivity, can make our life easier. And that doesn't mean that it's solving all the problems, and doesn't mean that, it is stealing jobs, or, it is going to disrupt, as I said before, yes. But once again, we have cars now. It's not that when the first car arrived, all the people that were, I don't know, managing horses, that just stopped things to happen. It's normal. It always happened.
I do think, whether it's, the actual education system or it's, upskilling that you were mentioning before, I do think it's important for people to, be given examples that can really hit home and maybe even just some basic analogies like we were talking about the car, right? Like, so here in New York, at 16, you get your driver's permit, which you have to take a test for. And then you have at 16 and a half, you get your actual license. That means you don't have to have another person in the car. But in that 6 months, you've got to practice, you've got to take driver's education, you've got to take an actual, literal exam, like with someone from the Department of Motor Vehicles, takes you out and they make sure you actually know what you're doing or whatever. So the point is with AI, we haven't done that, right? Like OpenAI basically just announced ChatGPT and said, here you go, have fun. And it's just like you just handed the keys to essentially like a 14 or 15-year-old that maybe had no business getting behind the wheel, and you just said, go nuts, right? Enjoy, do whatever you want. Wow, right? Like, from a technology standpoint, I was just thinking back to my time at NBC Universal when we were moving to cloud off of, data centers and legacy infrastructure. You didn't just give all of those, database administrators and all of those owners of servers or whatever. You didn't just say, oh, forget that, just go to AWS, go to Azure and just log in and, have fun, right? You had to go through a certain set of steps to understand what it means. How do I, spin up a new, instance? How do I tap into, S3 and get more storage? You had to go through these steps, not to mention all the steps around privacy and cybersecurity and things like that, right? You don't want to just basically inadvertently, leave the back door open, right? And cause all kinds of security incidents and maybe legal risk as well. So I just feel like, AI, now that it's in everyone's hands, right? I think the big difference now with generative AI is everyone has, the AI is the UI, right? The user interface, you're interacting directly with it, whereas, predictive AI in the past and analytics or whatever, like not everybody had necessarily direct access to some of those technologies. So we've got to do some of those practical steps. But I wonder, in some of the training that you've done and the workshops that you do, are there particular sort of exercises or scenarios that you describe that resonate better, that help people say, oh, now I start to see why I can't just rely on it like a calculator?
So I think that when it comes to tools, it can be very, very, very overwhelming. And B, if someone needs to understand the basics, I wouldn't really go into, this, you can use this tool for this tool for doing that, because I think that is too much. And these tools, most of them are new, some of them they will close. So I'm always trying to go back to basics. Basically, for me, it's an analogy. If, I don't know, back in the days when I was learning how to, I was 14, 15, when I was learning how to program, I wasn't learning, I don't know, I didn't start learning Visual Basic. I was learning something that wasn't visual. I was learning the basics, the real basics, to understand what happens. So for me, what I do, I first of all in the room, I ask everyone to think about, forget about what you know about AI. I always tell them, what is one internal process, very important, because they all want their support chatbots and stuff and that. And I just tell to all of them, just forget about it, because you have absolutely no idea how complicated and risky that thing is. So just put that thing aside. They told you can have your chatbot and fire all your support people, and that is not true. So forget that. Let's go to internal processes, because are easier and are less risky. So I always tell them, what is in your group, in your team, in your company, depending on how big, what is the process, possibly repetitive, most likely is going to be repetitive, that you don't know how, but you have a hunch that there must be a way to automate it. There must be a way, because it's so simple. And you can be sure that usually a good 80-90% of the times, they come up with something that you can immediately think, yeah, obviously, ChatGPT can help with that. And I'm going back to ChatGPT because, I've used a lot of, OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, Copilot. There is the same thing. But anyway, in my experience, OpenAI, they are quite far ahead. Claude sometimes is better in some things, but in my experience, in OpenAI, they are much, much ahead of everyone else in terms of text generation. So I always encourage everyone to literally stick with one tool. And I always tell them, if I was a business, I don't have time to try all the tools. I would tell them, just stick with ChatGPT. We're talking, it's the same difference between Google and Bing. Bing, it is good. It's not as good as Google. So I would just say, for now, because we don't have time to just go into the single nuances of the difference, just stick with ChatGPT. And I think, to be honest, that more than half of the times, I can have a business living with a working solution that automates some of their internal processes just using custom GPTs. I think custom GPTs, they are the most powerful thing that you can imagine. The thing that you can upload documents, so you can do RAG literally without knowing a single line of code, is very good at setting its own prompt, because it will ask you, what is this bot about? It's quite good with that. And, you can implement tools, actions, APIs. So, if someone needs something quite specific, you can basically tell them, you can use ChatGPT, make it your own, put in your own documents, explaining to them, obviously, what it means in terms of privacy, disabling the training of their model with the data, but, all the basics. Most of the times, I've done incredible apps just literally using the custom GPT, and people are always saying, wow, they just don't understand, they didn't know that. They think that they need to hire a developer, and I always tell them, no, this is why it is good. This is why it is interesting. You need your left side of the brain. You need your language. To make it work, you don't need code. You need to understand how to speak to someone else in a weird way, because we know prompt engineering and all that sort of stuff. And they're always incredibly surprised. And fun enough, when they ask me when I tell them that I didn't study, I'm not an engineer, I studied philosophy. I come from, I studied Latin, Greek, history, and philosophy. And they always ask me, how do you end up doing this? I always tell them, I ended up doing this. And the reason I love AI, it is because it is the ideal bridge between being humanistic and then being technical. And I always tell them, you can do it yourself. You just need to iterate. So I believe that custom GPTs are by far the most powerful tool that you can imagine out there. And once you have a developer that maybe can do an API for some external tool, I don't know, to have it interacting with your database, or you are a store and you want it to interact with your shipping, so whatever it is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly powerful. So that is the only thing I do. And the funny thing is that they all can do it for $20 a month. I tell them, you can have as many as you want. I think I have probably 50 or 60 custom GPTs just for me. It is incredible what they can do.
Well, we'll have to have a separate conversation where I could take a look at some of what you've built. I built a few myself, but not for myself. I built them when I was just playing around when that ability, first came out, and I created one around responsible AI. I created one to recommend whiskey, but I haven't done, as you described, some of the custom ones that I know can probably help me. And I think you made a point in there that I think.
Have you ever been to a webinar where the topic was great, but there wasn't enough time to ask questions or have a dialogue to learn more? Well, welcome to HR and Payroll 2.0, the podcast where those post-webinar questions become episodes. We feature HR practitioners, leaders, and founders of HR, payroll, and workplace innovation and transformation, sharing their insights and lessons learned from the trenches. We dig in to share the knowledge and tips that can help modern HR and payroll leaders navigate the challenges and opportunities ahead. So join us.
This is where I got concerned myself, which was, can this actually go in and out of, my CRM or my Google Docs or my whatever. And so, but to your point, just start asking it what it can do. It's not just the AI to help you, through all these, different tasks and to help you make decisions and research and things like that. It's also its own, help section and user guide and all of that all at once. And so you've got to just, spend the time, to your point, iterating and pushing its limits and understanding what it can do.
And it's available to everyone. That is the thing I'll tell everyone. It is literally out there. You don't need to hire anyone. I mean, you can start with it. Just do it. This is what I always tell people. Just start experimenting with it. I mean, there are people out there that literally they charge thousands to develop a custom GPT, and they tell people, oh, this is your model and stuff, and people are always impressed. And this is why I'm always very disruptive as an entrepreneur. So I literally go to businesses and I say, just please ignore all these people, just ignore all of them and just do it yourself, because half of the times you don't need anyone else. Then once you start needing, for example, they might need, I don't know, I am a legal firm or I am an accountancy firm. So you have compliance, you have internal documents, you can't upload them on OpenAI. And then this is when I just come in with my, one of my projects is called Your Vault, that it is literally like a private AI for businesses. And then I start telling them, you can do that. You can have the same power of ChatGPT with your own model that runs on your own instance, is only for you. And those data, they're not going out to anywhere. So, it's completely 100% private. And the problem is there are not many solutions that do that for businesses, for small businesses in particular, in simple terms. And, this is why literally my MVP for Your Vault AI already got 2 people that wanted immediately to try it, because the market is literally asking for such simple solutions. But there is always the numbers that, I wouldn't tell anyone to go on my service Your Vault until they've done some time spending it on ChatGPT and understanding how it works. It doesn't make any sense. It's just selling to the 16 years old that you told me, giving them a Ferrari. You wouldn't do that. You first need to learn on your Ford Fiesta or whatever it is, the scrap car that goes slow and you can destroy and you can make a lot of errors. Once you learn, then first of all, you will know if you really need a Ferrari, and then you will have a better ability to understand how to use it or what you need from your thing.
I'm a big Ferrari fan. It's hard to come up with a scenario where someone needs a Ferrari, but I understand your point. One of the observations that I've noticed, I have spoken to a few folks like you who are doing, training sessions, and one of the things that stood out to me was some of the exercises that they go through. Like one person has created like a card deck, right, where people can say, okay, you're going to use this, and it's really to help people understand the basics of prompting, and as well as understanding some of the responsible AI principles too, I will say. But here's your prompt, here's some context or whatever, and then you're working in small groups, right? So it's not just this fun exercise, but you're actually getting some different perspectives, right? Some cognitive diversity that is applied to some of these scenarios. And the response, the feedback that I saw was that people really were much more comfortable. It reduced some of the fear that you were talking about earlier, and drove some of that constructive dialogue that you were mentioning earlier that can help people get over some of that fear. The other exercise I was just actually in yesterday, there's an AI ethicist that I follow, and she created this game. It's called the AI ethics game. And so I participated in her pilot group just yesterday, and it was really interesting. She had created a custom GPT to basically play out this scenario where she had basically say, I've got this fictitious startup. This is what we're building. I've got 4 personas. We're going to ask these 4 people questions about how they've designed their solution. So the scenario was as a startup that built an AI-powered learning tool for developing markets. So people that haven't necessarily been exposed to all of this technology and won't necessarily apply, critical thinking by default, because they'll just be so enamored with this fascinating new technology. But you got to ask questions of the CEO, the CTO, a junior data scientist, and the product manager. And everyone from all of these different, the whole audience was basically coming from these different perspectives. There were at least 10 different sort of roles that people were coming from across industries as well. So again, you had this cognitive diversity, and people were basically asking probing questions. Well, where'd you get your data from? How are you accounting for personalization when you're supposed to be, these are students, right? Like, so you need to keep that data private. And it was just a really interesting and engaging way to try to get people to think more deeply about not just the solutions that might be out there now, but how startups in this space who are building these solutions are thinking about it. And I think it goes back to one of the things we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, which is these shiny objects, and everyone just kind of latching on to this technology and then going to try to find a problem to solve it with. Like, this is my new shiny hammer, and let's go find some nails. I feel like it was an interesting example of where, again, maybe this is because I'm close to this and I talk to these startups and I see these startups in the space building these solutions and building more of these sort of shiny objects, right? They're building solutions. They're building those hammers in the hopes that people find nails to use the hammer and buy the hammer. So it's interesting to see from the other side, like some of these startups that are building things that also don't use that mindset that said, what problem are we actually solving? What is the pain we're creating a vitamin for? Like what are we doing? And so it was just interesting to see all these people who are not AI experts by any stretch actually asking intelligent, probing questions like, did you really put ethics first? Are you really being human centric, or all you're worried about is, you got VC money and now they want to see you moving fast and breaking things. But that's not necessarily appropriate, right? You need to be thinking about the human factor. You need to thinking about the ethics involved. You need to be thinking about, the fairness, and that these are people who are not technologists that you're targeting, and you need to take a step back because there's like red flags all over the place.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. As I said, we go back to what we were saying in terms of the responsibility is on us, and education is going to be a key element in all of that. To just tackle exactly to do what you're saying.
Yeah. So I know you sort of advise people not to, go out on product hunt, or there's a bunch of sort of catalogs of all these AI solutions cropping up, and, a lot of them are half baked or maybe quarter baked at best. And it can be both dangerous and time consuming to try to go and play with some of those. You don't know what it's doing with your data. Besides some of the main, LLM vendors, is there anything that you've seen aside from the things that you've built where you think that there's promise, like there's something that could be extremely useful? Or on the other side, is there anything that you see that you think this can't do anything good, this is dangerous?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I tried many tools, and in the end, I always go back to integrating the main players myself. But probably this is also because, obviously, as a tech person, if I don't see something that I like, I build it. To be honest, I mean, apart from using tools like, I don't know, Grammarly for things that is very useful. I mean, OpenAI, it is integrated everywhere in everything I do. Lots of good AI for coding, MVP developing. It is incredibly useful. And, there are, things like Cursor, that it is like a VS Code integrated with AI, which can be incredibly powerful once you configure it.
I imagine you've played around with some of the ones generating like multimedia content, or music and stuff like that.
I've used, obviously, Midjourney for image generation, but there's always the same advice that most of the images it generates they have problems, but it can be incredibly useful. So I definitely use Midjourney. In terms of videos, I mean, I didn't try Sora. I've seen some other of the video generation tools at the moment, but they still look very weird, fake. I mean, they still look like a series of images stitched together. So we're still not there. But Sora is very promising. But obviously, we have seen only the demos, and I want to be able to put my hands on it. So in terms of generation, possibly not. I mean, there are many tools that generate music. They are at best elevator music, at best. So I'm not really bothered by it because, I mean, there are reasons behind it, obviously. To make music, you can't expect an AI to be trained from mixed music, as in from a stereo file that contains all the instruments of a song, because there is no way for it to understand the single parts apart from the very simple cases. So you usually just get, more obvious than with text, I think, mishmash of something existing that sounds horrible and it is a copy of something else. I mean, what I see very well AI used, it is when it is integrated into the production process. So, for example, I don't know, Adobe Premiere, I do a lot of video editing. They have now Firefly, that it is literally an AI integrated into editing. Same thing with Photoshop. Very, very useful, very powerful. So you don't use it for necessarily generate stuff, but you use it to edit, to correct things. Same thing in music. There are lots of plugins for, in the box mixing and mastering. They all use AI. So I don't know, things like polishing a vocal take, because I don't know, I was recording it at home and there is an ambulance passing by doing my best take. Before, it was going to be quite tricky. Now there are many plugins that they use neural networks, and they know how a voice sounds. So if there is a dog barking or an ambulance passing, they can literally filter it out intelligently. So that is where I can see the full power of it. But in terms of multimedia, I don't think I see anything really useful in terms of generation yet.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that angle, but it does tie to some of the other themes that we see, like AI should be augmenting, human abilities. And to your point, a better use of AI is to clean up the audio and make you, the musician, the singer, etc., or the podcaster, sound as good as possible, but not take that job away from that person.
But I mean, if you think about it, it's the same with text. I always tell people never use an image from ChatGPT, from DALL-E, or from Midjourney as it is without literally checking it. And I always tell them never use a text as it is out of ChatGPT or whatever. Just consider it a draft at best of the times, and most of the times it's just going to be an inspiration for then. That is where AI is useful, as a resounding board, as a tool for firing up ideas, and then for drafting. That is what it is. So that is where I see it being very useful.
So any words of advice for people trying to get started who have not attended one of your workshops and just know that they need to carve out the time but haven't yet?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I think the best advice I can give them, it is, personally speaking, just go on ChatGPT, create an account. It's $20, pay the $20 because it is what you need, and then just start experimenting. If you go on Google and you Google OpenAI custom ChatGPT, you will see 1.5 million tutorials where you don't need to be a developer. It's not a tech thing. It's just a tool to be used, and just go and experiment with that, because I think this is where you will see really the potential and also the pitfalls of AI. And I think you will have a much better idea of how it can be used for your business.
Awesome. All right, great advice. Giancarlo, thank you so much for joining me. I think this was a fascinating conversation. I think listeners will have a lot of takeaways and a lot of things that they can go and play with themselves. I'm going to make sure we include some links to some of your projects and your startups in the show notes so people can access those and know how to reach you. So thank you again.
I'm reachable obviously on LinkedIn and stuff. I'm always happy to have a chat with people.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Giancarlo, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.